Understanding and using the 4 fundamental stroke types is essential, and a lot of people don't even know they can't do it very well. We're going to look at them on the pad first and then talk about drum set application. Strokes are defined by the position of the stick before and after the note is played. Each stroke will prepare us for the next note without any wasted energy or motion. We'll start with a full stroke, otherwise known as a legato stroke, free stroke, piston stroke, bounce stroke. There's a lot of names for this one. Full strokes are just where the stick starts and ends in the same position. They utilize the bounce of the stick. We want to use a good amount of velocity on the way down so that the stick can help us on the way back up. To do this, we have to stay really relaxed in our hands. Keep in mind relaxed velocity. That's the way to go. Full strokes don't require the stick to start really high. They can kind of start anywhere. It's just about starting and ending in the same spot and using the rebound to get you back to it. Downstrokes start high and end lower. These strokes are the most important to work on. They really allow us to play with dynamics, and I see a lot of people doing them inefficiently. When the stick ends lower, it's stopping. The way we make the stick stop moving, there's 2 things to keep in mind. 1, we just don't let it come back up. That doesn't mean we squeeze it. 2, when our stick is moving freely, it has a lot of room to breathe in our hands. Our fingers are on the stick, but it can move around. When we stop the stick, we can bring it in contact with our palm, and that'll stop the motion. We don't want to squeeze into our palm, we just want to touch it to our palm. That's really it. All we're doing is not letting the stick bounce back up. It'll move a little bit on its own, but it's not going to go back to where it started. With this, something to think about is how we are creating and maintaining rebound. The angle of the stick has a lot to do with how it wants to rebound. You'll notice that when I have a downward angle into the drum, the rebound acts differently than when I have a parallel angle to the drum. Something to think about. Taps are just full strokes, but lower. They start and end at a lower position. When playing lower or quieter, we need to use the same mechanics as full strokes. So we're rebounding the stick and we're letting it guide our movement on the way back up. All we need to do is move the wrist and use a little bit of velocity and it'll do the rest of the work for us. We don't want to be really tense or use our arm for taps. Upstrokes start low and end higher. These ones are kind of weird in theory. We play a tap and then just follow where the stick would go to prep for our next note. This one's all about relaxing and moving our wrist in the natural path the stick is moving in. It's kind of like a prep for the next note, and we'll dive deep into preps in a future video. Sometimes the upstroke can use the whip stroke, which we learned in our technique video. This would be especially useful when we're playing faster and don't have as much time. With all of these strokes and whenever we're playing, we want to think more down than up. We make the stick go down, and if we let it, it'll help us come back up. We don't want to think about always moving up and down, controlling every aspect of the stick. Anytime we get in the way of the natural flow of the stick, we're also getting in the way of our good sound and good movement. The more input from us, the worse things get. Let the stick do what it wants to do. I talk about velocity a lot. Let's cover it real quick, though we'll probably do it way more in depth in the future. The height of the stick, where your stick is starting, that doesn't really matter. What matters is the speed of the stick. Velocity is like speed and direction, right? The slower we move the stick, the quieter it'll be. If I start my movement really low but move it very fast, it's going to be louder. That was kind of a rim shot. That was a little cheating. Doesn't really matter too much where your stick is starting. It matters how it's moving. We do want to play from higher or lower for accents and taps just because it helps us flow a lot better. The speed of the stick is really where the volume comes from. So with that in mind, say I'm playing at a pretty good tempo and a pretty good volume. So notice that the stick doesn't really stop. When I'm starting up, going down, coming back up, that all is one motion that just keeps going. Though if I were to play slower at the same height or volume, now you can see the stick kind of hangs out in the air for a little bit longer. It kind of does stop. I'm not doing this. That's just a lot of wasted motion. We want to move the stick down fast, and we want to come back up at the same speed, and then we can kind of make our decisions on what to do next based on how fast we're playing. The 2 most important aspects of controlling your movement are being relaxed and maintaining velocity. Here's a few things we're going to do to work on our stroke types real quick. So this first exercise, very technically, it's full down, tap up. Full stroke, downstroke, tap, upstroke. But more simply, it's 2 accents and 2 taps. So I'm going to play it real quick. First loud note is a full stroke, and that preps us for our second loud note, which is a downstroke to prep us for our first quiet note. Then we have a tap, and that'll prep us for our second quiet note. And then lastly, we have an upstroke, which preps us for our loud note again. Full, down, tap, up. So you're probably going to be better at this with your right hand or your left hand, depending on what your dominant hand is. When you do both hands at the same time, you can mirror your weaker hand to your stronger hand to make sure you're doing all this motion the same way. it cuts your practice time down immensely. Anything with accents and taps is a good exercise for working on this stuff. Like bucks, that's just accent, tap, accent, tap, accent, tap. We have a downstroke and then an upstroke. Down, up, down, up, down, up. It's all about prepping ourselves for the next note. Accent, tap, tap, accent, tap, tap. We have down, tap, up, down, tap, up. And as you go faster, you can start to see how you can utilize the arm a little bit for our upstrokes. I'll do bucks. Now I'm going to show you some of these stroke types in context on the drum set with the help of me, just for fun.